the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday. It's a Sunday. Weekend's almost over. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. We got Nikos in the house today. Hey, Nikos, how's it going?
Hi, Yaron. Hi, everyone.
So we're going to be talking about tribalism, identity politics, and anything you guys want to talk about. So feel free to use the super chat, ask Nikos questions, ask me questions. We'll get to that in a minute. In the meantime, let's see. We're going to have we're going to be talking all things tribalism. Maybe we should start our own tribe, since you now are the world expert on tribalism. Maybe we can figure out how to do this. All right, we got a bunch of people excited to hear Nikos, so that's good.
Thanks.
All right, a few things. One, go right now on Twitter or Facebook. You can do Facebook too, and let the world know that we're live, and encourage people to come listen to us live. I'm typing as we're talking. I'm typing in Twitter live now. And just so everybody knows, and they can come on over and watch the show. So you all can help us get the numbers up by letting everybody know that we're live. You can also, first like the show. You can do that thumbs up thing next to the like button. You can, of course, share the show, and don't forget, we will take questions on the super chat. So super chat is open and available, and we're taking questions, and we've got our usual $600 goal for the show. Let's see, what else do we have to talk about before we get going with the show? Yes, we'll have a show on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I still haven't decided if I'm doing a show on Christmas Day or not. Probably not, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do a short, like, Merry Christmas show or something. Just we can sing Christmas carols and stuff, and then we'll get off, right? So we can see. I was just accused that I have no sense of humor, so I'm trying really hard today, and I've got Nikos on, who hopefully will make us laugh. Part of his job, because I have no sense of humor. Let's see. So we're doing that. We got Tessie on. Tessie's from London, so Tessie's closer to Nikos right now geographically than anybody is to me, particularly in Puerto Rico. But Tuesday, Thursday, 7 p.m. East Coast time, then we'll definitely have a show on Sunday. It's like a Christmas hangout. Or contributors who contribute $25 or more, $100, anybody contributing $25 or more on a monthly basis will be invited to the hangout. We'll just hang out and do a Christmas stuff. I don't know exactly what that means. We'll figure it out as we go along. All right, so we are here with Nikos. Nikos, how do you pronounce your family name?
It's much easier than you think. You just read the hyphens one by one. Sotirakopoulos.
Sotira. Okay, there's a ra there. Sotirakopoulos.
Yeah, that wasn't bad. Or just Nikos.
Okay, so you know how in certain realms in life, people go by just one name?
It's like Spanish football players, like Xavi.
Exactly. You're just Messi, or just Pelé, right? The Brazilians are very good at just one name. Nikos is just Nikos. Forget the family name. It's just not worth the effort. It's way too long. Generally, I've noticed Greek words are very, very long, and there's probably a reason for that. I don't know what it is exactly, but maybe Nikos can enlighten us. All right, this is the book we're talking about. It's got, Nikos has a copy as well, not surprisingly. It's called Identity, Politics, and Tribalism, The New Cultural Wars. You can get it on Amazon. I see now, I've got Amazon open right now. Only 14 left in stock on Amazon. So if you want an actual copy, because that way you can get Nikos to sign it for you one day. Mine is signed. Mine is dedicated. Actually, oh yeah, it is signed. Is that your signature? That's pretty pathetic. Just like Nikos? You got
Well,
to develop.
why would I put my signature? It's not a contract. It's like it's me
You've
who
got to
signed it.
develop
That
a
was the whole
signature.
point.
You've got to develop a signature for signing books. I can show you how to do that.
Okay.
It has to have some flair to it. It has to have something. So you can buy a paperback copy and then get it signed by Nikos. And Nikos, for those of you who don't know, you see the boxes back there? That's because he used to be on the verge of not being anymore, a lecturer at York University.
York St. John.
York St. John, which is in the very north of England. It has some of the most depressing weather in the universe, I think, certainly on planet Earth. It's not great weather. I've only been to York once. It was cold, bitterly cold. I thought I'd walk around because York is like this nice old city, and it was so cold. I found the closest Starbucks, and I just hung out at the Starbucks until I was giving a talk. I was doing a debate at the University of York. So he's leaving York, going back to Greece. And he is becoming fully employed by the Enlightenment Institute. He is going to become a fellow. Fellow? Is that the title?
A visiting fellow, mostly teaching in the Ayn Rand University and doing the things I've been doing till now, which is working with ARI Europe and making sure that we spread objectivism in Europe.
So Nikos is in charge of Europe. He's the boss at Europe. So he, if you want me to come and speak in your European country, somebody yesterday suggested a university in England that I come and speak at. If you want any of that, email me or email Nikos. We will make it happen. There is a budget for it. So you don't have to worry too much about budgetary issues. But if you want me to come to your country, any country, I will go anywhere in Europe. I think. Is there anywhere I won't go in Europe? Belarus, maybe. Pretty much anywhere in Europe I'd go. Maybe not Belarus. Other than that, I am open. And we could talk about the season. We were just talking about this before the show. We were planning for me to come to Europe in January and do the tour. We had Nikos had arranged events for me in Amsterdam and Rotterdam and Paris and maybe Germany and maybe
Vienna.
Bulgaria and Romania and all over the place, right? Certainly, and now because of this, I won't even say because of COVID, because it's not because of COVID, because of our cowardly, pathetic, unscientific, ridiculous politicians. We just decided to cancel the trip, which is depressing because I'm addicted to London. And if I don't get like my shot, like every 3-4 months of a trip to London, I go into this withdrawal, and I'm starting to feel the withdrawal. And the idea of going to London even for 2 days in January was really, really, I was getting excited.
But literally every single country we had organized an event.
Yeah.
If the event happened today, you wouldn't be able even to enter the country because of the new restrictions.
It's insane. It's insane. Talking about tribalism, maybe we can connect our topic today. Politicians across the board, America and the rest of the world, are panicking. But the rest of the world is worse. Netherlands, where we had 2 events scheduled, shut down until January 14th. Completely. No bars, no restaurants, everything's shut down in the Netherlands. And why? For something that seems to be mild, that if you're vaccinated, you're probably not going to get hospitalized. If you've got a booster shot, it's mostly a non-event. Why shut down a whole country? I don't know.
And remember, they didn't let you in Netherlands, even in September, when things were mostly back to normal. We had to cancel Netherlands also in September.
Yeah, so the Netherlands, it's interesting. I just read that the Netherlands has the highest inequality rate in the world, right? Based on this Gini coefficient, it's the highest inequality rate in the world. So old money, a lot of old money. And I think, a lot of very powerful families and, I don't know, very paternalistic, probably, very, I don't know, very defensive,
but at the same
very
time,
risk-averse.
The one country that there are 2 towns and not one that want Yaron to talk.
Yeah.
So it would be in Rotterdam and in Amsterdam.
Maybe the more desperate a country is, the more they want me to come and talk.
Maybe.
That's part of it. All right. So enough about bitching and complaining about my inability to come and speak in England, in Europe. I'm now planning a 2-week trip in March and then another trip in April, May, potentially. So we will get there. I'll just have to hold off on my craving for for Europe, but we will be there soon enough. All right. So Nikos is going to become full-time employee at the Institute, going to be teaching at the Ayn Rand University, OEC. So that's super exciting. You're moving back to Greece?
Yes, I'll be based in Greece because why not?
Why not? Yeah, I mean, after spending a few years in York, yeah, why not? Athens, York. Certainly in terms of weather, it's no competition. And also in terms of culture and warmth of people and food. God, you must have suffered really badly in York.
We had some good lunch in Athens in September, so you can understand.
Yeah. We did. All right. So Nikos is heading out to Athens, but today was Zoom and everything. It doesn't really matter. All right. So the book. Let's start with what led you to write it. What was the motivation to write this book?
So the motivation to write the book was we would see all these concretes in terms of toxicity in the public sphere and weird events, people being deplatformed, chaos on campus, sometimes even violence. And the question was, are these concretes that have a reason that has to do with one political side? So for example, if you asked someone at my university, an academic, what is the problem with the world? They will tell you it's very clear. There are these populist right-wingers who have gone completely rogue, and this is what is poisoning the culture.
Yeah.
Whereas at the same time, if you would talk to someone who is a conservative, they would say, it's very clear what is happening. There is this other side, the left, who have become intolerant, dogmatic, and so on, and this is what is causing the problem. And yet you would see quite a similarity in some of the different expressions of these culture wars. For example, you would have people who say feminism has gone a bit too far. The women, they see men as a group. They are deterministic. And this is bad. This is causing toxicity to the public sphere. And these same people, then they would form a different group, let's say the manosphere or red pill or MGTOW, however you want to call them. And you would see them following some of the similar ways of thinking, that men are one group with their own interests. Women are a different group. There's also this determinism there that if you're a woman, you think like that. And then they would adopt the victim mentality. So this made me think, if we see different groups acting in different ways, could it be then that the problem is not the left or the right, but the problem is a way of thinking and a way of viewing the world? And this is what led me to tribalism. Tribalism being the mindset, the way of viewing the world that can connect the dots in the culture wars, that can connect the dots between, for example, white nationalists and people who follow critical race theory, or between Marxists and nationalists, or between the red pill and the woke, MGTOWs and feminists and all that stuff. So there's one mindset that characterizes our culture today. And this is what's led to the idea of the book.
So let's define tribalism. What do we mean by tribalism? So I agree. I mean, as you know, I constantly say the political spectrum is collectivism, individualism. Tribalism is a particular form of collectivism. What characterizes tribalism, and how do you differentiate from other forms of collectivism?
Yeah, to put it in, let's say, party line language, it's an epistemological choice, or to put differently, it's the prism through which you choose the world, and you choose to use that prism. So it's not an instinct, it's not unavoidable, it's a choice that you make. And this choice says, I will put on my tribalist glasses, my tribalist lenses, and I will see myself, others, and the world not as individuals, and I will judge them not based on reality. I will judge them based on what is my group interest. So you don't have as your starting point and as your arbiter reality, you have as your arbiter what is the group interest. And this is, for example, why we see very often double standards, which is, let's give an example. Let's say, remember with Brett Kavanaugh, that the left was saying, look, we have to believe women. Here we have a serious allegation and we have to take it very seriously. Maybe there's a merit there. There is a merit there. Let's say last year, someone said something, an allegation about Biden. The same people who were saying when it came to Kavanaugh, believe women and say, come on, that's one allegation, it doesn't look to stand.
Mhm.
And the same people who, when it came to Kavanaugh, they said, well, they're trying to ruin him. One allegation cannot mean the end of his career. The same people would say, we need to very much examine this allegation against Joe Biden. This cannot go. So same situation or similar situations, completely different way of dealing and judging these situations. Why? Because again, your arbiter, the way, your mode of thinking is not what do I see there? What is actually happening in reality? Your mode of thinking is, which group is that person? Oh, is that group? Then I already know what the answer is. So this is in simple terms what I see as tribalism.
But there seems to be another dimension of this, which is implied by what you say, but it's not. We should make explicit, and that is that by doing that, right, you're implicitly and really explicitly rejecting your own individualism, your own individuality. And you're self-identifying yourself. That is, you're making your nature. You're giving up your epistemology, not to your thinking. It's not like you're evaluating the groups. You are now a member of the group, and to a large extent, as a member of the group, how do you know who the bad guys and who the good guys are, based on what others in the group are telling you, right? Based on what's the dogma of the group.
Exactly. And this is very important. Most people think that tribalism is bad because it makes Twitter a toxic place or because it makes politics annoying. No, the number one problem with tribalism is what it does to your mind.
Yeah.
Because in a way, you're switching off your mind. You are operating at a level which is way beyond what your mind should operate on. And it's, in a way, we could say it makes you stupid. Tribal, yeah. And I see this with myself. Quite often I'm tribalistic, and I have a deep past in tribalism. It's, in a way, you shut down your mind and you say, I will give up the thinking, someone else who is going to do the thinking for me. And for example, this is very clear, particularly in, let's say, in a communist party. I had an experience with the Greek Communist Party, and part of any Marxist group is that party discipline means that once the party decides something, it is correct. And you could even say that, let's say, the 5 people who take the decision individually, they're not clever, but because they are, let's say, the Politburo, somehow they have this common wisdom that is going to come up with the right decision. And then you have to persuade yourself that, you know, I can see that this is wrong, but I have to follow the line. And actually to persuade yourself that you are wrong and the line is correct. So it's something very destructive to your mind. And that's the number one problem with tribalism. It's not that it makes politics what they are today, which is bad enough. It's mostly how you damage your own brain and you take away power from your mental strength.
Yeah, and given that epistemology, integration is so important to epistemology, even if you do it a little bit, it's only going to get worse. And it's only going to be, the destruction will spread. The destruction will go into every part of your epistemology and destroy your capacity to really think as an independent being. And we saw that over the last 5 years. We saw people dabbling with a particular tribe, not really adopting them, but slowly. And then within a few years, they're completely mindless followers without any self-identity, any individuality.
And you see them on Twitter and you tell yourself, this person has literally become more stupid. Yep. How is it possible? Like, this person used to write these very good, clever, well-reasoned things, and now this person is stupid. No, it's just that that person has given up their mind.
Yep.
That person is now thinking they're taking their marching orders not from reality, but from the group or from some other people.
From some authority that represents the group. So, so what do you think? Have we always been tribal? Is tribalism just kind of the default for human beings? Is it you know? So, and then, you know, and if you want to touch on the kind of the evolutionary question, is this what we evolved to be, and it's inevitable that we be tribal?
So the problem here is that many people confuse tribalism with the idea of it's important to have communities. So when they say tribalism gives an evolutionary advantage, you could see it 2 ways. You could say it is important to form communities, but forming communities and tribalism is something which not only is not the same, I would say it's almost contradictory. The one contradicts the other. Because what do you want from a community? When you come together with other people and you have a name, you have a goal, you want to make sure that these people are people who can think, who can have independent, objective judgment. So, for example, we need to do this. And the higher the stakes, the more important this is. So let's say you go to war or you go to a revolution. Yep. You need people with this independent judgment. And you have similar values. For example, you value freedom and you say, okay, we come together for this goal. But I don't give up my mind. I don't give up my values. We go together to war for a common cause. But we know what this cause is and we know why we want to pursue this cause. That is one thing. That's, let's say, a community. A tribe is, I just happen to be with these people. And because they're my people, I have to go with them. An example that I got from a common friend of ours, from Greg Salmieri, he mentioned the example of Robert Lee. And many people say that Lee was someone who didn't really believe in slavery. He was a good guy and all that stuff. But what did Lee do? He said, these are my people, therefore I have to fight. These are my community, therefore I have to fight for my community, good or bad.
Yep.
What a tragedy this is. You recognize that your community is doing something immoral, slavery. So supposedly Lee recognized slavery as immoral, and yet he said, but it's my community. I have to go with the community.
And they owe 600,000 young people who are going to die as a consequence.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is real evil.
Yeah, it's because it's one thing to say, I'm with my community because I understand why we're on the right side and I will go to my death with them. And it's another thing to say, well, they're my community. I understand they are wrong, but what can we do? They're my tribe. So confusing the tribe with the community is not something which it's a mistake. Now, the other thing that you mentioned is tribalism and instinct. If tribalism was literally an instinct, this would mean that I don't have free will. Mm-hmm. If tribalism is an instinct, it means that I cannot switch it off, but we can switch it off. You see, for example, people starting as being tribalists and then not being tribalists, being independent thinkers, although it's super difficult, but it happens. You see people going the opposite direction, and you even see societies being poisoned by this poison of tribalism, and then 20 years later, and massacring each other. Rwanda is an obvious example, but not the only one. Well, and you see the same society 20 years later, different culture, different ideas, or they have learned the lessons and they see the world differently. So no, tribalism is not an instinct. It's not a gene. And I think this is what many people who try to understand tribalism make a mistake. And they also make the mistake, they say, we need a little bit of tribalism. Why do you need a little bit of tribalism? Why do you need a little bit of surrendering your mind to someone else? So if, let's say, the peak of tribalism is Rwanda and machetes and massacring other people merely because they're part of a different group, why would you need a little bit of that? You don't need any of that. And that's how we should see it.
Yeah,
community based on value good, tribalism not good.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I mean, any bit of poison, any bit of tribalism is destructive to you. So let's go through a few examples today, because if we think about historically, tribalism is focused on ethnicity, group affiliate, kin, family. It's focused on who you grew up with. That was the history of tribalism. I mean, we as a species, we used to live in tribes of multiple family members and family groups, and that was the community in which we lived. But something unique, I think, has happened, I'd say, over the last, I don't know how long, maybe you can tell us, where tribalism has now moved from the sphere of ethnicity, from the sphere of people who look alike or come from the same background or share the same family genes, to a point where tribalism is now ideological and all over the place. So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into some specific examples of both left and right.
Yeah, so the question is why now? And to answer the question why now, we need to understand, again, what is the need for tribalism? The need for tribalism is that the world doesn't make sense, therefore I need to cling to a group to make sense of the world. So,
well, it's more than it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense. And I can't trust the tool that's supposed to make sense for me.
Exactly.
I.e., I've been taught my entire life that I can't trust my reason.
Exactly.
All I have is emotion. I feel fear, which means I need to cling to the group to reduce my fear, right?
Exactly. And if you combine this, let's say from the 60s, with this idea of identity politics, with this idea that different group, not only they are victims of injustice, in which way we should say, yeah, let's get together so that we alleviate this injustice. No, they are victims of injustice, and they have to be victims of injustice because that's how they view the world, and this is how the world is set up. So, for example, if you hear people who talk about the patriarchy or who talk about white privilege and all that stuff, it's almost as if this is a static situation that can never really be alleviated. So you have this idea that of group interest, identity politics. At the same time, more and more that you cannot trust your reason. And this comes either from people who say there is a black reason, a white reason. As a woman, I think yes. As a black person, I think yes. But also from people who you would think they're more on the quotes, our sides of the culture wars, people who don't like the left would say, who also tell you there is no free will, who also tell you you are determined, who also tell you you can't make sense of the world. And this is when the world becomes a very scary place. This is where the world becomes like this painting by means, like the Scream, where you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Yep. And what are you going to do? You look around, as Ayn Rand said, if I cannot trust my reason, somehow I have to make sense of the world. So I cling with people who look like me, same color, same skin, same gender, or by people who I decide they're my group because I hate so much the other group. That's what you see today with woke, anti-woke.
Yep.
And basically whatever the other group says, I'm the opposite. And we saw this with the vaccines, right? I mean, how interesting and pathetic that the same people who in October of 2020, they were saying the vaccines is the best thing in the world because God Emperor Trump gave us this vaccine in record time, within months, they would switch their position altogether. That's what I found very interesting. They would switch as a group. So there looks like in the culture, there is urge to cling with some people and form, let's say, your existential meaning together with them.
And you think that's driven by fear, because you can't trust your own thinking. You can't, and you're told you're determined. You're told your reason is impotent. You're told to rely on your emotion, and that's all it leads to is to fear. So you huddle up in a group.
And you are constantly encouraged to view yourself this way. I mean, think about the university. You think about, for example, the things like diversity training and all that stuff. So, or that your skin color or your gender is having your life choices in a way very severely, it has a very severe impact on your life choices. And then you tend to believe it and you say, oh, turns out, yeah, then I am my genes, then I am my genitalia or my skin color. So it makes sense if you are bombarded with this and you have no intellectual defense to this to say, well, yeah, it turns out, how can I make sense of the world? And also you are constantly reminded how scary place the world is. Environmental disaster, the patriarchy, capitalism, or what are the fears of the right, like great replacement, immigration, globalization. So scary place and risks and fear everywhere. And this is a very fertile ground for tribalism.
So walk us through a little bit of kind of how we got to where we are today in terms of, let's start with the left, the tribalism on the left. How do we go from Marxism, which was supposedly intellectual, but how did Marx kind of lead to where we are today? How did the new left in the 60s lead to where we are today? What's the story there on the left of the evolution of kind of the woke world in which we live now?
So there are some germs, or some roots already in Marxism, because Marx's epistemology is very unclear. He talks about this thing as false consciousness, or this idea that you've got working class consciousness and bourgeois consciousness. Now, he never explicitly says that the world cannot make sense, but it is somewhere there. But at least Marx had this idea of universalism, which is at the very end of the day, somehow will manage to make sense of the world. He's not sure how, he doesn't tell you how, but at least there is this aspiration of universalism, that that with the working classes, let's say, is going to encompass the human spirit. Now, from the 60s, with the new left, you don't have this anymore. So if you read the Frankfurt School, it's this depressing idea that the world doesn't make sense and the world cannot make sense because there's
no utopia. So the Marxist utopia is written out. There's no end game.
There is no end game.
There's no
there is no end game. And I mean, you could say they have the shell shock from the Second World War and Nazism. So they said, look, you people believed in enlightenment, but look where enlightenment has led us: the Holocaust, the Gulag, and the nuclear bomb. As if the Nazis and the Stalinists were the embodiments of reason in the Enlightenment. So, but anyway, so the new left sees that since we gave up on enlightenment, we have to give up on the idea of these big narratives like freedom, reason, and all that stuff. Therefore, they say the best you can hope is that you deconstruct the current modes of oppression, and then what? Then blank. Then we don't know what to do. So there's this almost inherent, almost nihilism, that the best we can do is to fight the powers that be, but we can't really know the truth. We can't really know what is right. And then you have other movements who say, well, we can't really know, but our reality as this group is different from the reality of this other group. Therefore, the best you can hope is to understand reality based on your group. Mm-hmm. So this is how we go from something like Marxism universalism to the idea that we can't know the truth, to the idea of, well, since we cannot know the truth, the different groups live in their own different truths. And this is how we find ourselves today with this black thinking and white thinking and female thinking and all that stuff.
And what do you think what are the main manifestations of tribalism on the left today?
The most obvious one, I think, is what most people understand as critical race thinking. And why is this though? Because it's an open admission, it's an open acceptance that yes, indeed, the world does make sense through the prism of the group. And this is the idea of lived experiences. Now, because we have to be very careful to not strawman them, you could say that it does make sense that quite often you don't know how bad things are if you're not in this group. So, for example, I've been reading the biography of Malcolm X, and I thought, oh my God, things were really bad. I knew that things were bad, but I never imagined they would be that bad. But the critical race theory will take a step further. They will say, even if you possess all the facts, even then you're not in a position to pass judgment. We see the same discussion, for example, around sexual assault and all that stuff, where you tell me, look, the statistics, my statistics say, and say, it's not about your statistics, it's about the lived experience. If you're not a woman, you cannot really understand. And again, on a superficial level, there is something to it. Yeah, I will never be able to understand how scary it is, let's say, to walk alone at night. Sure. But this doesn't mean that I cannot make the value judgment of this is good and this is bad and this is, or this is how we can try to solve this problem. So in a way, we live in a tower of Babel where communication is impossible. I cannot understand you. You cannot understand me because it's impossible to share lived experience. And then what can we do? We can be in a constant conflict on whose, quote, truth is going to supersede the other's truth.
Well, that's why tribalism has to lead to violence. Tribalism cannot lead to peace. Rand writes about this in The Roots of War. She writes about it in Global Balkanization. The more we become tribal, the more we give up on reason as a measure of truth. There's nothing to debate. There's nothing to argue about. If I have a white mind and somebody else has a yellow mind, and we each have our own truths and we each have our own reason, then we can never agree. There's no mechanism by which we can show each other that we're wrong. So the only way to resolve any disputes is to see who's strongest and to use warfare.
And what I find very shocking is that this was exactly the way of thinking of people in the past that all would agree was horrible and wrong. So, for example, you have Carl Schmitt, like the Nazi in his Nazi days, where he would say, look, I can understand that someone who is an alien, that's the term he would use, an alien, would have his views, would make, let's say, a piece of art, and it might even be a good piece of art, or he would even make a good piece of argument. But it's alien art or alien argument.
Yep.
And if you tell this to a class today, a class on Nazism, they would all agree, oh my God, that was horrendous.
Yeah.
And then in the next class, they would be taught the similar mindsets in a different package, where we would talk about cultural appropriation and things like that. And we would say, yeah, that does make sense. So the inability to see how bad these are, what is the bad history of these ideas, I find this very difficult to comprehend. Like it doesn't even require a very deep analysis to understand the parallels between how these ideas in the past were shared by some very, very bad people.
Well, some of it is the issue of morality. Some of it's the issue of the tribe. That is, no. Nazis was a bad cause. This is a good cause. So in the name of a good cause, it's okay to do things that in the name of a bad cause would be horrible. Right?
But the problem here is that I don't know of anyone in history who would wake up one morning and say, today I'm going to follow a bad cause.
Of course.
Everyone rationalizes that their cause is good. So just thinking, oh, I'm on the good side of history, therefore anything goes, I can give up my mind. No, that's not the way to go through life.
That's exactly why it leads to violence, and it has to lead to violence. And there's no alternatives. It leads to some form of authoritarianism or another. There's no good outcome from tribalism. All right, so that's the left. Let's go through the same thing on the right. I mean, the right historically, and some people still argue this, the right, it represents individualism. First, was this ever true as opposed to tribalism, or the right always being tribalistic? And if it is true that once it had an individualistic element in it, when did that go away, and how did we get to where we are today, where clearly the right is tribalistic?
Well, first of all, the right is such a big umbrella. So
Yep.
if you think about it, people would put under the umbrella of the right people like, I don't know, Carlyle and Ayn Rand, or people like Trump and Lincoln. So it's difficult to make sense, although we can discuss later what is right and what is left. So the right most of the time has been a reaction to something, to the French Revolution, to liberalism, then to communism. So from very early, you see in the right an uncomfortable tendency towards reason, an uncomfortable tendency towards the industrial society, because then what happens to the traditional virtues of the fighter? Like, is the industrialist a hero? Then what happens to the warrior? So the right very early on is a bit cautious with these ideas. So you have the tribalism of the right when it comes to, let's say, the blood and soil nationalism, or the idea that there is, let's say, a German culture and a British culture, not in terms of distinguishing, okay, this is different, but that this is ours and this is them, and we cannot communicate, we cannot understand them. And the right also has its good moments when it makes away with this skepticism towards reason. So if you think about classical liberalism, you would consider this the right, this is a more or less secure path to stay away from tribalism. The other thing with the right,
what's interesting about classical liberals is they're hated by both left and right, particularly today, and that's why I wouldn't consider them right. I think right, properly understood today, maybe 50 years ago is different. It is the collectivism, just as collectivist as the left, but just with a different emphasis, different tribe.
So nationalism is not nationalism in the terms of we create a nation state because we have different values, but nationalism as if kind of we are inherently in conflict with other nations. This is tribalism at its purest. So obviously, for example, fascism and Nazism are tribalism at its purest. Now, many people will say, oh no, these movements were leftist in their philosophical essence, but in terms of their politics, it's clear that they are on the right. And if you see in the last, let's take the United States, post, let's say, the 90s. So what about this idea of United States is kind of under attack from, let's say, immigration, or United States is what made us a country was, for example, not our common values, but that we were a white country. So this is a very obvious and clear example of tribalism. And you see this from the 90s. So for example, if you see Pat Buchanan's famous talk in 92, which in a way launched the culture wars. So Buchanan is a tribalist, and he's someone who probably wouldn't even revolt against the term. And the interesting thing is that the few things that really excite the right, that really create some enthusiasm in the right, are mostly ideas that have to do with tribalism. Trump's campaign, Buchanan's campaign back then. So you can say, okay, they were not very influential, but they were influential in terms that the only time that the right can give you something to be enthused about, as opposed to the Mitt Romneys and the boards that they couldn't enthuse anyone, is when they turn tribalistic. And it is when they turn to the culture wars, because that's the only area where they can distinguish themselves from the left. Mm-hmm. So that's why they can't wait to jump in the culture wars, because it's the one area where you can say we're different. They cannot be different in terms of we support capitalism, because they don't, but they can be different in terms of, yeah, we support, as Rand says in Conservatism and Obituary, we support the American way of life, whatever that means, right? No explanation, no particular values. We are for the American life. They are against the American way of life.
So, and where do you see today tribalism, appearing on the right? What are the most obvious appearances of tribalism on the right?
So the most obvious one is obviously the white nationalists, but you would say this is a small percentage of the right. But I will give you another example, which I think
Trumpism is probably the most obvious one.
Yeah. So Trumpism is the difference between Trumpism and white nationalism is white nationalism has a coherent ideology. It might be wrong, but there is with Trump, you don't have that. So with Trump, it's kind of random.
I mean, that's interesting. Would you consider, the adoration of a person and that person, a leader, as tribalism? That is, if what unites people is we adore him and he is going to guide us and whatever he says goes, is that still tribalism?
Yes. And the test to understand whether this is tribalism is the following one. Is your point of reference, your point of judgment, your arbiter, is it reality or is it a person, a group? If your point of reference is a person, then yes, you're in the tribalist mindset. For example, when you see Obama meeting Raul Castro and your reaction is treason, horrible, sanctioning, and then when God Emperor Trump meets Kim Jong-un, and then your reaction is, this is 4D chess. This is the greatest diplomatic victory since I don't know when. Then you are basically telling the world, yes, I am a tribalist, because similar occasion, completely different standards based on what? Based on who is the person. So people over reality, to put it in very simple terms, tribalism.
Okay, so we've got a lot of super chat questions.
That's good.
20 or 30, 20 maybe. Still less than halfway to our goal, guys. So keep the questions coming, particularly $20 and above. Those are the questions we like in particular. So what's the antidote? Tribalism is on the rise. We see it everywhere, see it on left and right. It's unbelievable how unthinking people have become. How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this mess?
So before we get to how we get out of this, there are two favorite antidotes that are completely wrong. The one says, but why can't we all just get along? So it's as if the problem is polarization, where in a way it's lack of polarization because there are no two ideological poles. So they say, why don't we just get along? And the point is, no, I don't want to get along with a racist. I don't want to get along with Bernie Sanders. I don't want to get along with someone else. So if you say, why don't we just get along? It's as if you're saying, well, ideas don't matter. You're a Nazi, you're a communist, we're all friends here. And the other wrong antidote is this one that says, let's meet in the middle. That it's quite often it's even Jordan Peterson tends to say that the problem is we have too many ideologues and we just need to not be too strict. And again, this means that ideas don't matter. Therefore, let's throw ideas out of the window, which interestingly, that's exactly what the tribalist does. The tribalist throws ideas out of the window to have people as their point of reference. So the solution is independent thinking. But the problem again is that no one wakes up in the morning saying, today I'm going to be a tribalist. And this is something that you have said so many times, Yaron, that being an independent thinker is very, very, very difficult. So the conspiracy theorists, the person who watches Alex Jones, they are convinced they're independent thinkers because they say, look, I'm not someone who is going to buy into what Fauci is telling me. Therefore, I'm going to think for myself. So being an independent thinker, A, needs a commitment, and B, even if you have the commitment, it's still very, very difficult. So
and the commitment is to what? What is the commitment of independent thinking?
The commitment is I have to see what really is the reality out there. So for example, on the issue of vaccines, I really want to see the facts. I really want to understand the numbers, as opposed to, well, the people I follow on Twitter have changed their view, and now the left supports the vaccines. Therefore, probably I'm going to go against the vaccines. Or you see people who say, I've had the first 2 doses, but I'm not going to have the 3rd dose because they need to get the message. Yep. You are not taking the vaccines for anyone. You're taking them for yourself. If you don't trust them, don't take them. But don't tell me I'm not taking them because I want to stick it to Fauci.
Yep. All right, we're talking about Nikos's book. Here it is. Identity, Politics, and Tribalism. There are only limited numbers of actual. Now there are only 13 copies. So one of you has already bought one. Come on, guys. It's $20. And it would be cool if by the end of the show, there was 0 copies left in stock on Amazon, right? That would be really cool. And Nikos, can make a little bit of money towards his rent in Greece. So he doesn't have to live with his parents over there in Athens, right? So go buy a copy. Right, go buy a copy, and I want to keep refreshing my screen and see that number going down, right, going down. And don't spend all your money on the book, because we also need the super chat questions over here, because I need to pay my rent as well, or my mortgage, as the case may be. All right, let's see. Where are we? We've got a lot of super chat questions, and I'm trying to think how to organize them. Well, let's take the $50 question first. Even though it's not exactly on topic, but it is $50. So you get priority. We have to give priority to the bucks. We are completely motivated by money here on the Yaron Brook Show. Liam asks, why are European welfare states so much more efficient than the American welfare state? And you're asking a Greek. I'm not sure that's the model. And is violent crime lower in Europe because Europeans are more sophisticated and civilized? Or is it because Americans have more balls and are more willing to engage in physical conflict?
Okay, so first of all,
why are the European welfare states more efficient?
So the interesting thing is sometimes the best provisions for welfare is when the welfare state doesn't exist. The obvious example is Greece. Think about it this way. What kept Greece afloat during the crisis?
The black market.
The welfare state. Sorry?
The black market.
Exactly. Corruption in a good way and family networks. So for example, in Greece, if you don't feel well, even unless you are very, 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 very poor, but almost everyone, you go to a private doctor, you pay them under the table, 50 euros, whatever. They don't declare this to the tax service. Everyone is happy. So don't confuse a very organized welfare state with a country where people in a situation of crisis are going to have a good outcome. But I'm not convinced that Europe has. So, for example, it's less.
So Denmark has a more. If you look at for every tax revenue dollar collected by the government, how much of that for redistribution? How much of that actually gets to a poor person? And I'm pretty sure in Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, most of Europe, not Greece, not Southern Europe, but Northern Europe, it's much, much higher than it is in the United States. And I'll speculate. I don't know the exact answer, but I'll speculate. One, these countries are smaller. So everything's more local, which just is easier to manage. The United States, because of the federal system that we have, welfare, you have multiple programs at the state level, then you have programs at the federal level, then you have programs that interact with both. And then the United States has it doesn't really want welfare, right? It kind of, particularly initially, it kind of passed welfare reluctantly in little programs, right? Like food stamps and things. And then instead, and it keeps adding stuff, but it doesn't want a big welfare program because it pretends, Americans are very good at pretending that they're capitalist, self-reliant, independent, and we're not a welfare state in America. Americans still believe that. So it's always done a little bit at the time. Imagine if you got rid of all the welfare programs in the US and replaced them with one. That's Europe. Europe doesn't have this patchwork of, I think there are like 1,000 different welfare programs in the US, each one adding a little patch, adding a little thing. Whereas in Europe, it's usually, they have no problem. Okay, well, eliminate 5 and replace it with 1. Because we know in Europe, they know they're a welfare state. They've acknowledged it, they recognize it, they've embraced it. In America, we have this, we live under this guise that we're not really. All right. Second question is, why is Europe less violent than the US? Is it because Europeans are less manly?
Probably not. So I don't think there's a testosterone correlation with violence. So it has to do with cultural reasons. It has to do, for example, if you live in a small town, everyone knows everyone, so it's not easy to be violent. Guns definitely play a role in terms of fatality.
Now you're going to be canceled. Now, Nikos, you just said the kind of stuff that gets me, 50 people unsubscribing in a moment.
Well, I didn't say we shouldn't support guns. I'm just saying it's a fact that although someone would bring up, for example, Serbia or Switzerland, where they have a lot of guns and not so much crime. So
not as many as the US, and not the kind of guns you have in the US, but yes.
Probably yes. But so this would imply, though, that the more manly you are, the more you engage with violence. So basically, this would affirm the toxic masculinity theory, which I think it creates a package deal. But to be super honest with you, my friend, I don't know. I haven't researched that topic, so I can't answer with authority.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a history. It has to do with history, and it has to do, unfortunately, a lot of crime in the United States is focused on particular ethnic groups, particular neighborhoods. I mean, a lot of the United States is less crime-ridden than even Europe, but other places are super violent. You'd have to really get into the sociology of it, but it's not. Partially, it's cultural diversity, which leads to people lack of trust, and in a place, as you said, small, everybody knows each other, everybody's the same in some way. There tends to be less crime.
But thanks anyway for the super chat to our friend.
Yeah, no, okay. So they keep coming in. And Shali, thank you for the support. Didn't ask a question, but gave $20. Okay, let's see who else. Okay, Michael asks, combining nationalism, environmentalism, and socialism is not original in the slightest, right? So yesterday, I don't know if you heard the show I did yesterday, but it was about combining environmentalism and religion, environmentalism and religion and nationalism. See, it says combining nationalism, environmentalism, and socialism is not original in the slightest. The national conservatives are Nazis plagiarizing their political strategies from the Third Reich. That makes sense to you? So, in many ways, environmentalism is a very inherently conservative movement. And even today, if you see, I was reading in preparation for the book, the identitarians, the self-described identitarians of the right today. So people who are, let's say, reactionary, and I use the term literally reactionary right. And they would say things like, we need to save nature from the attack of capitalism and things like that. Yep.
Or in the United States, the first radical environmentalists were more, quote, of the redneck type rather than the university educated. Because again, the idea is we need to protect nature from this assault of industry and commerce and of human presence. So not to even mention the low-hanging fruit, which is the environmentalism and the blood and soil philosophy of German National Socialism itself, which goes back to German Romanticism and all that stuff. So yeah, no, definitely our friend has a point that there is a history of combining environmentalism and socialism.
Yeah, but it's also dangerous, I think. That's absolutely right. But I think it's dangerous to call everybody on the right a Nazi. Just because
definitely.
I think it's just, it closes off conversation. It closes off discussion. They're not advocating for the annihilation of a whole race of people. They're not advocating for a genocide. But yes, the combination of nationalism, conservatism, and environmentalism, really, if you go back even to the 19th century German conservatives who didn't like capitalism, they wanted man to go back to nature. It's also on the left with, Rousseau is somewhat of a environmentalist, somewhat of a nationalist, and anti-capitalist. And conservative in the sense that, he's anti-capitalist. Well, he's not. I guess he's not a conservative, really. He's anti-conservative.
But the big question that, just to add to what our friend said, the big question is not how the right are environmentalists. The big question is how on earth did the left become environmentalists? Because the left and environmentalists were the most unexpected allies in the 60s. So if you see the Bolsheviks, if you see Marx himself, if you see Trotsky, if you told these people that in 40 years, people will be anti-industry, anti the domination of nature. So Maxim Gorky, the famous Bolshevik intellectual, he says, once we are done with class struggle, the new Soviet humankind will have to deal with the ultimate enemy, which is nature. And he makes this idea of limits. So the Bolsheviks were openly that the heroic endeavor of humanity is to conquer nature. And you say this to a leftist today, they're going to freak out.
Yeah, and even the Communist Party in China, which is not exactly communist, but to the extent that they are communist ideologues, they're not environmentalists in any respect. So yes, there's nothing in Marx that's pro-nature. I don't think Marx ever saw nature. He basically lived at in libraries and surrounded by concrete structures.
And he spent half of his career attacking people on the left, what he called the utopian socialists, who would be closer to today's environmentalist left.
So what do you think caused the left to move towards environmentalism?
So the one thing that caused them to move is that, again, this betrayal of the idea of modernity and enlightenment. Yes. So they said modernity and enlightenment leads to Gulag and the Holocaust. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is giving up the idea of human agency. So if you see the working class, as again, the Frankfurt School did, you see them as a problem. You see them as these alienated people with their needs. Then the human needs, the needs of human beings, their values, their goals becomes the problem. And the simpler explanation, which is not necessarily the deeper one, is that it was a convenient moving of the goalposts. That you would say, well, we told you that capitalism would bring misery. Oops, turns out it doesn't bring misery, but it destroys the environment. Therefore, capitalism is bad.
Yeah. And I mean, I think this idea that giving up on the Enlightenment, the left is giving up on reason, therefore they're embracing emotion. And they go to the philosophers who embrace that stance. And that's much more Rousseau, and Rousseau becomes a darling of the left and still is. I think Rousseau kind of shapes a lot of the thinking on the left today. Kant to some extent, Hegel much more so, and Hegel, of course, with no free will, much more so than even Marx, I think today.
Or Nietzsche minus the heroism.
Yes, minus the pseudo-individualism. It's Nietzsche. So they're much more about emotion, will, state of nature, naked in nature, civilization of destructive force. The whole defund the police is motivated by a Rousseau-like, let's get rid of civilization. It's a police that cause crime. police is not a response to crime. Police is a way for the powers to oppress people, which leads them to be criminals. And that's the rationale that they use. All right, we've got a few questions about Greece. Why do Greeks have such a fetish with multiple hard left political parties, including Syriza, Communist KKE, Varoufakis Day 25? In most countries, one is enough. Why such an infatuation with the hard left?
So first of all, to put it into perspective, in Greece, Syriza is not hard left. In Greece, Syriza is the revisionist left. Yeah. So the hard left is from the Communist Party on the side. So by the way, it's not completely crazy if you think about it in historical reason. So the left for decades had this aura of heroism. We were the people who were fighting the Nazis with a rifle, and then we had the Civil War, and then you put us in prison where you would torture us, but we would not give up our ideals. And then we had the dictatorship, and we were the ones who stood in front of the tanks. So the one reason is that this aura of the left, which is accompanied by heroic music, heroic art, which has a very profound impact on someone's soul. So if the right is giving you statistics and the left is giving you, we are the heroes with a rifle in the mountain, guess where the hero worshipper is going to go, the young person, until they know better. The other reason is that, what's the alternative in Greece? So the right in Greece is parochial, boring, with a dirty history. And what they tell you is, look, we understand the left is right, but their means is not good. So everyone in Greece agrees that the moral high ground is with the left. Well, if this is the case, why not go to the left? And why not actually go to the principled left, which is the Marxist-Leninists and the 15 Marxist-Leninist group beyond the Communist Party?
And why are there so many different parties? Why can't they all get along?
Well, that's the tribalism of the left. But so in Greece, for example, we have a Marxist-Leninist Greek Communist Party and a Communist Party of Greece, parenthesis, Marxist-Leninist, which are both different from the Greek Communist Party. So this would take an episode of its own to explain.
All right, another Greek political question. Why is Varoufakis held with such high esteem by Greeks as a hip voice of the people? He charges $40,000 speaking fee, deposited to UAE Bank, United Arab Emirates Bank, and serves up repackaged anarchist Marxism. Are Greeks so gullible for his BS?
Okay, so Varoufakis did something very, very clever. So the left is successful when it sells you a defeat. The left is very successful when it says, we almost made it, but somewhere there was this betrayal. So what happened in 2015, we had the referendum. Varoufakis resigns the day after, literally the first days after the referendum. So he's not there in the U-turn. So he can say, while I was there, we lived the biggest moments of popular resistance that we have experienced since the 70s. And then I left before the big compromise. So he's this pure, uncompromising person. But he hasn't got the esteem that he used to have. So his party gets some like 3%, but he's in the parliament. I mean, his party is in the parliament.
Okay, more some quick Greek questions. These are short. Is the weather in Greece as nice as Southern California?
Yes, but not in the summer. Summer in Greece is overrated. It's too hot, too many mosquitoes. So
very humid, very humid. It's very Mediterranean.
Better in the
California's got better weather. It's just, that's a reality. California's got better weather. But Nikos doesn't have American citizenship, so and it would be far away from his tribe. We can get to that later. All right, here's one. What is Cyprus? Do Greeks and Turks hate each other?
We hate each other historically. Interestingly, Greek and Turks on a one-on-one level, we get along well. So Cyprus, most of the people in Cyprus who have some, let's say, right-wing allegiance, and take this with many pinches of salt, would consider themselves Greeks. So, for example, in football games, they wave the Greek flag, whereas those who are more like center left or left, they would say, no, we are Cypriots, Greeks, we are allies, but we don't consider ourselves, first we're Cypriots, then we are Greeks. So it has to do with what are your politics, but I'm no expert, take this with many pinches of salt.
Yeah, but there's also a part of Cyprus that considers themselves Turks, right? And,
well, they couldn't do, I mean, they don't have a choice because it's occupied by Turkey. I mean, apologies to our Turkish friends, that's the reality. It's literally military occupation.
Yeah. All right, let's see. All right, I think we're done with, no, we've got one more. I was thinking questions about Greece. Okay, Nikos, are you going to live in Athens or Crete? I think he's living in Athens. Are you at liberty to talk about Ayn Rand University there? How big is the objectivist influence in Greece? What are your plans to grow her influence?
So yeah, I have roots in Crete, but I'll be living in, I'll be based in Athens because hopefully I'll be traveling a lot to do objectivist stuff. The presence of objectivism in Greece is absolute, very, very low, although Yaron has spoken there at least 3 times.
Maybe more.
So yeah, we'll be working on it. And whether I'll be in Liberty, where I'll be conducting the classes through Zoom. So I hopefully there's no.
Yeah, the Ayn Rand University is not going to be based in Greece. Nikos is going to be there, but it's going to be online.
Yeah.
And most of the students will be from all over the world, and Nikos will be teaching through Zoom.
Yeah.
Michael asks, how is Ayn Rand viewed in Greece? Is she well known? If you bring her up in your philosophy class, will you be viciously attacked?
Not necessarily. I've given guest lectures to university in Greece. Most people don't know Ayn Rand. By the way, same thing with academia in the UK. I never had any trouble with my objectivist credentials, although they were open in my CV, in my cover letter. I think it's because most people don't know Ayn Rand, so I didn't have a problem in the UK academia.
All right, guys, we're about $260 short of our daily goal. We don't want to make this the show that we don't make our goal of $600 a show. So, we've got some questions, but there's plenty of time. You can come in for some questions. I've got $50 questions would be great. We'll make the goal that much faster if we can get there, but 20 also fine. I'm encouraging you not to ask questions below 20 just because we have quite a few, but go ahead and help us get to the magic 600.
Can I turn to the last question, Yaron, and ask your take on this? So how would you evaluate a culture like the Greek one? Very, very much anti-statist in terms of people don't like authority, but at the same time with a huge influence of Christianity and the left in terms of, we have to live for the community and all that stuff. So I think in the past you've said that corruption and this idea that you don't trust the state is not a guarantee that this society is going to be a freer society than other societies. What's your take on that?
Not at all. I think the Greeks have had very bad experiences, certainly since World War II, but even before that, of the state being corrupt, the state being, violating their rights, the state being, not a positive influence, right? Not something that adds value directly to their lives. And if you think about it, Greece was occupied for hundreds of years by the Ottomans, and so there's a resentment of that. So there's a certain nationalism as opposed to the Turks, but but it's mainly in opposition to the Turks. And there's a certain pride in being Greek and the history and what it means and so on. But that does not mean that they view the alternative as being, okay, the state sucks, we need to limit it, we need to constrain it. It's mainly a cynicism and a skepticism towards the state. So, this is the way it is. You can't really hope for better. There's never going to be a better government. There is no such thing really as a better government. Yes, other countries seem to have it better a little bit, but Greece, it is what it is. And the devolution is not towards individualism. It's towards skepticism, cynicism, and a different kind of collectivism around religion, around ethnicity, around a certain form of nationalism, while not really trusting the government that's in charge. I do think it makes Greece susceptible to authoritarianism if the right kind of person came about, but that person would have to get by the skepticism and the cynicism. Right? I mean, European societies are cynical. The more corrupt they are, the more cynical they are. right? So Germans are not cynical, but Greeks are very cynical. Israelis are cynical, right? Mediterranean countries tend to be cynical because they tend not to trust their government and not like their government. But it doesn't make you an individualist. It does make you have to use your own wits to survive, because the welfare state doesn't function very effectively, and so on. Roland asks, is Greece more on the religious side or kind of relativistic subjectivist side?
Well, I wouldn't consider the one opposed to the other.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. I was going to say that.
Yeah, so they are on a very religious part, but at the same time, they follow all the intellectual trends with some delay, which says, so for example, for many years, the fashion in Greece is all political parties need to sit on a table and find an agreement. This is how we go beyond political cycles. We sit down and we meet in the middle, which is relativism in politics at its purest. So unfortunately, they're both.
So people in Greece, even the hard left, are religious?
No, but there's always this unspoken and quite often spoken respect between the religion and the left, because they say Jesus was the first socialist, or they would say, look, they are martyrs. Communists never do something for themselves. When they kill and get killed, they never did it for themselves, which is true. So there were indeed martyrs, and the religious people like this.
All right, so one more Greek question, I guess. I think they keep coming in. Nikos, what is your take on Zorba the Greek film, and how it accurately or inaccurately represents Greece? So
Zorba is accurate description of an average Greek. Steve McQueen plays him brilliantly. I don't like
That's cultural expropriation, though.
Yeah, but he does the appropriation very well.
Queen is obviously not Greek, right?
He's not Greek, but I can't imagine a Greek playing him better. But notice the very negative idea, right? That, whatever you do, it's not going to work at the end, but we will dance in the ruins happy at the end. I hate that message. I don't like that message.
I hate that too. I hate it too. Yeah, but it's compatible with this cynicism that comes from both religion and from kind of a leftist, one of the things that happens to the left, the socialist left, not so much the nihilist left, the socialist left is, they were idealists when they're young. It never worked out. So what do? They give up on all ideals. They become skeptics, cynics. There is no such thing as an ideal. That's just when you're young. That's what they become. All right. Roland says, I meant relative to other countries in religious side or relatively secular.
Yes. So in this way, it is very religious. And religion also has an effect on politics. So, for example, if you remember this Yugoslav civil war, Milosevic was more popular in Greece than he was in Serbia. Why? Because they are the Orthodox brothers. So, and the church in Greece has this idea that we are the guardians of tradition. We are the guardians of the revolution against the Ottomans. We are the guardians of what it really means to be Greek. Therefore, with our brothers in Serbia, we are both against this assault of modernity and of the West. So Greek church is very much anti-West and always has been since the Byzantium years.
All right, so we are about $230 short on the super chat. We've also still got 10 books on Amazon. There's still 10 books on Amazon. So I just put up the link in the chat. You can go and buy Nikos's book called Identity, Politics, and Tribalism, the New Cultural Wars. There it is. Nikos is holding it up. I'll hold it up too, because I'm not sure the camera switched to you. There it is. So this is the opportunity. The only 10, they're going to go. They might go today, they might go tomorrow, but they're going to go. So you might as well get one today. And it would be cool if by the end of the show, we were down to zero on the books. That would be really nice. All right. Let's run through. Says the link doesn't work. Okay, so just in the description in the video on YouTube, I put the link there, and I just clicked on that link, and that link does work. So when I copied it over, to the chat. It must have cut off some stuff, so it's not working. But
or Google my name and tribalism, Amazon, and it will come up. By the way,
and you don't
Amazon
even have to write Nikos's family name because that's impossible. Just put Nikos Identity Politics Tribalism, and you get it. It's the first book that comes up, so you can find it. It's up there. There are only 10 copies left in paperback. Otherwise, you can buy it on the Kindle. But it's cool if you buy it in paperback. And then Nikos, one day when you meet him, will be able to sign the book. And I know the link doesn't work in the chat. I apologize. It seems to have copied badly. Oh God. Ryan asks, did you like My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
So I just watched it very recently, and in some ways it is accurate, but also factual. Indeed, most of the words you use have a Greek origin. So in that way, the film is accurate.
And it's pretty funny. I thought it was a funny movie.
And there's something real in it. So there's something, that's why we find it funny. Greeks find it funny because there's something real in it.
All right. Nikos is going to lose his Greek following at this rate. All right. Bradley asks, what makes someone masculine? Here's a light question. And how is that different in the prehistoric material world compared to the conceptual capitalist world? Did Fight Club miss the power of masculinity in the conceptual world?
Okay, I did a whole episode on Fight Club on the Daily Objective. Okay, so what makes someone masculine? I would say being able to impose your will on yourself and on reality. So to shape nature, to tame nature according to your will, but you have to do it in a way that is good for you. So that's what would be my 1 second definition without having thought of it too much. And obviously you don't only have to be a man to do this. So for example, Dagny does exactly this in Atlas Shrugged, but also she has other feminine attributes. So what's your take, Yaron? What does make someone masculine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. It has to do with the ability to shape the world, the external world. And therefore, it does have something to do with physical strength, at least competence with the physical world in some level, and that's associated with strength. I mean, the main difference between man and female ultimately is muscle, right? And that I think has deep psychological implications. That have deep implications in terms of the kind of psychology one develops and the kind of it has spiritual implications, if you will. But at the end of the day, the difference between men and women is both the reproductive and physical strength, and to some extent domination. But that comes to some extent from the physical strength and from the nature of the sexual activity. That's the kind of the domination. But domination.
By the way, our friend mentioned Fight Club. It's interesting, as I was growing up as a leftist, Fight Club, that was the movie for the cool leftist anti-globalization kids.
Yeah.
And fast forward, Fight Club becomes this kind of red pill, redefining masculinity movie, which is mostly popular with the reactionary right. And now the left has nothing to do with it. So it's interesting how within 20 years, the audience that find this movie appealing changed. I think it's a good movie anyway. Brad Pitt is great, but yeah, obviously philosophically, yeah, there are many issues, particularly with the book. The book is more scary in some ways philosophically than the movie itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's philosophically, the movie's, I mean, it's very bad. And it's, look, it's there's always a materialist, a power issue, a muscle issue. And yeah, sometimes it's the left, sometimes the right. It's never the individualistic party that adapts it, but it's always some collectivism of the muscle. And I think we've moved from a Marxist tradition of the muscle to a kind of a fascist tradition of muscle. And I think that's where we are today. The fascists are much more engaged with that. You see BAP, the kind of reactionary, go back to not even the Greeks, right? The Greeks are too intellectual for BAP. You have to go to the Bronze Age, pre-Greece, right? Pre-intellectuality to get the pure, you know.
Yeah, and interestingly, BAP brings up Alcibiades or the Spartans, some Spartans, but none of the classical Athens people. So it's even in terms of seeing BAP and ancient Greek is an interesting kind of.
Of course not. He's not going to. I mean, he would love Sparta. We are lovers of Athens, and he's a lover of Sparta, and that's basically the difference. And that's not because Sparta's masculine and Athens is feminine. It has nothing to do with that, right? Because you both are masculine, but Athens is a much healthier masculinity and a much more integrated human masculinity, where Sparta is more animalistic, right? Sparta is dealing with the world at the animal level.
You'd expect that in the Civil War, Sparta would defeat Athens in like 2 days. The Civil War lasted decades, and Sparta won only when it involved other people, other colonies. So and I think Pericles says this in his famous speech, that they spend all the time training, and yet don't be assured that we're not better warriors than they are.
Yeah, and the only reason they win in the end is because Athens tries to take Sicily, or it has expansionary goals instead of focusing on the real enemy, which is Sparta. But if the Athenians had stayed focused, Sparta would not have won that war. All right, I'm sure we'll return to the issue of masculinity one day. It's an interesting issue. On constant, unpredictable lockdowns just as bad as limiting or abolishing free speech, why are free speech restrictions the only standard for objectivists to become civilly disobedient?
Okay, so it's interesting that our friend mentioned unpredictable. I think even if they were predictable, it would be bad. This is what Hayek says, that, well, if you know the restrictions in advance, then it's kind of okay. No, it's still not okay. But it's
never okay.
Yeah, and I don't think that we are among the most constant critics of the lockdown from very early on. So I don't know why many people think that either ARI or Objectivism has been kind of, well, neither here nor there with lockdowns. We've been shouting from the rooftops about lockdowns from day one.
Middle of March when they started. Absolutely. I don't understand. We're here to protect free speech, and we're here to attack lockdowns. Are we big enough and important enough and significant enough to engage in civil disobedience? No, it would be a waste of time. Nobody would pay attention. We'd get locked up in jail, and nobody would even give a shit, because why should they? We're just a bunch of crazy objectivists. Civil disobedience requires numbers. All right, Bree asks, the rejection of the Enlightenment is the root of this kind of thinking, this tribalistic thinking. You discussed this happening in Islam, in your history of Islam. I guess that's me. My question is, how many times does this happen? It might make a good book. What you mean is the rejection of reason, right? The Enlightenment is just one historical period in which reason comes to forefront. I mean, clearly it happened, to one extent or another during the Roman period, right? When they abandoned Greek philosophy, or they abandoned Aristotelian influence in Greek philosophy, and they embraced Neoplatonism, which really means they embraced Christianity. And that is the first that I know of, because there is no reason before that, right? And then you have Islam rejecting reason, and now you've got the West rejecting reason. So it hasn't happened many times in history, because the fact is that reason as an idea has not been dominant very many times in history. We haven't been in a position to reject it very many times in history. All right, guys, we've just gone over $400 for the super chat, which is good, but not good enough. Still 10 copies of Nikos's book on Amazon. So, if I could find a way to copy paste the link, I'll try it one more time, so you have no excuses. I just don't think it'll work. I think there's something when I copy paste that just makes it not work. So, I know. There's a different way to do it. All right, sorry, I'm being a bit of an idiot. All right, here, this is better. This link will work, maybe. Yes, it works. I just clicked on it. It works. All right, no excuses, guys. The second link works. Go buy the book. It's $20. It's interesting. It's really fascinating. It's a great topic. Just a few of the chapters, right? the tribalist mind, then the left, so a review of kind of the history of the left and how it evolved into the tribalist mind, and the right, that's the next section. Then it's about free speech, right? And the new radical thinking, so progressive radical thinking, white nationalism, the alt-right.
Racial thinking, not radical thinking.
What's that?
Racial thinking, not radical thinking.
Yes, the new racial thinking. God, I can't read. The new racial thinking, progressive racial thinking, white nationalism and the alt-right, and then the gender wars. You know, you guys will love this. Feminism and the manosphere. Up until like 2 years ago, I didn't know what the manosphere was. Now, I know because they hate me so much. I'm an enemy of the manosphere, so now I know what it is. I even went to spoke twice at a manosphere conference, not knowing what I was doing, and only later did I discover what the hell was going on. And
but back then, when you spoke to 21 Convention, it wasn't like there was no manosphere. It was more, hey, here are some people who talk about dating advice. And by the way, that was a good talk. I hope they haven't taken it down.
It was a good talk. It's still up. And I think it's actually on my channel. I think they let me put it up on my channel, so they won't take it down. It was a good talk. I spoke twice. I think once in London. Is that right? Once in London, once in like Florida or something. Oh, Texas, I think. And they had like personal training stuff, and they had nutrition, and they had some dating stuff. Although the dating was always questionable. It always treated women as not having free will, right? The dating stuff always was, in my view, questionable. Maybe we disagree about this, but I'm dubious. But of course,
there's
I know
a whole section on the game and on pickup artists in the book, so people can find out.
Well, I know exactly zero about dating. I haven't done it in 40 years, and I was never very good at it. Even when I did it, I was pathetic at it. So what do I know about dating?
But apparently it worked though.
Yeah, I mean, because I this is my advice for finding the woman of your dreams. Have her find you. That's my advice, right? So it wasn't because I was good at dating. It was because she was good at knowing what she wanted and going for it. So I had very little say in the whole thing. Right. All right. Let's say I was smart enough to know when I had a good thing coming. Right. That was my contribution to it. Let's see. That was Bree. Eric asks, is this the cause of all the genders? Like men are thus, I'm not, ergo, I'm not a man. I don't understand this question. Women are thus, I'm not, ergo, I'm neither woman nor man. I must be non-binary. Not non-binaries are thus, I'm not, ergo, ad infinitum.
I'm confused, but...
I'm confused. I don't know what that means.
If you mean that there is this urge today to find ourselves supposedly through our identity, this is definitely a trend. And it's a bad trend because it's very static. It's like, I have to find this box, and unless I find this box, I don't know who I am. And in a way, who cares who I am? It's like, what do I become? What do I do? Why do I care in which box do I have to fit in?
But it's interesting. Why do you think, how does this devolution of gender into 98 different genders or whatever the hell the number is now, how does that fit into tribalism? Because you think tribalism would unify around all women, all men. This disintegration of gender, how does that fit in to this kind of thinking?
Well, to unify, you need some standards. If you don't have standards, then the more the merrier.
Yep.
And also, when you have this need for recognition, which is what Ayn Rand calls second-handedness, that again, my self-worth comes from how other people see me. And unless other people see me exactly how I want them to see me, and unless they change their way of doing things and of speaking so that they recognize me, then I won't have any self-esteem. This is the end of self-esteem. You are not going to get self-esteem by getting the 98th gender that someone else recognizes you with. So again, the main problem is not that this is annoying in the culture wars. The main problem is, what does it do to the people who want to get this recognition through their identity and through the eyes of other people?
Yeah, it's also epistemologically a sign of the disintegration in the culture. So there's nothing that will allow you to integrate. Everything is a unit. I am my own gender. There's 8 billion genders out there because there's nothing to unify us. There's no categories that are unifying, because I think the postmoderns and a lot of the thinking on the left has been towards complete disintegration. You see that with the intersectionality. How oppressed are you? And, you break it up into enough groups where basically each individual has its own, identity and intersectionality score by which we rank ourselves. So it's a consequence of epistemological disintegration, that they can't even identify themselves with an integrated gender with other people who are the same as them.
And also it's a lower of your horizon, because in a way it's your claim to achievement. So I don't achieve to do something to be remembered of, but I will be remembered and recognized because of my identity.
John asks, to what extent are the ideas of Herbert Marcuse responsible for the prominence of tribal thinking in the US today?
So first of all, pitch that we have a new Objectivist Academic Center course with Onkargate called The Road to Critical Race Theory, and people can sign up. And the first lecture will be on the Frankfurt School. So Marcuse from more
and is Onkar giving that lecture?
Sorry?
Is Onkar giving that lecture?
We are giving all the lectures together, me and Onkar.
Oh, wow.
So Marcuse was the most prominent from the Frankfurt School everywhere, not only the United States, because he was the one who was his writings were mostly political. So he has had an influence. And also he's the one that said at the end of One Dimensional Man, it is not the working class who will bring the solution, but it will be the minorities, the third world, the farmers of the third world, black people, the people in the ghettos. And by the way, what a reversal of Marxism, right? So that's why I don't like when people say, oh, these are communists. No.
Post-Marxist, or they're all Marxist. Everybody's a Marxist.
Yeah, they're not Marxist.
Lazy thinking. They're not communists and they're not Marxists.
Yeah, so Marcuse had an influence, a theoretical influence, and even a practical influence. So Rosa Parks was, not Rosa Parks, Angela Davis was his student. So he has had an effect on the intellectual level and on the level of being, let's say, the mentor of the new social movements of the 60s in the mind of most of the activists, and in his mind. He also saw himself as this kind of politicized intellectual of the Frankfurt School, as opposed to Adorno and others in the Frankfurt School.
So Enric wants to know, how do people take the ARI University Critical Race course? How do you take that?
So go to the Ayn Rand Institute page, go to the Objectivist Academic Center, and they have a list of modules. But very soon you will see on Twitter advertisements about this course. This course will be open to auditors and to students, and there will be further announcements very soon. We start in January, but very soon you'll see in social media. Otherwise, go to the Objectivist Academic Center's webpage and find the modules that are in offer, and you will see it there.
That's great. All right, let's see. We still got a lot of questions, and we're still, well, we're still short a little bit, but it's getting closer. All right, Adam asks, Nikos, your take on the Hegelian synthesis of utopian left with theocratic right. How does this synthesis emerge from tribalism? Do you see this synthesis as a greater long-term danger? This was my argument yesterday on the show about this article by a national conservative called, I mispronounced it, I'm not going to be able to pronounce it now. Anyway, this Harvard law professor, Vermeulen, anyway, he wrote an article called The Party of Nature, where he wants to bring nature into the conservative movement. So this is back to the synthesis of utopian left with theocratic right.
So first of all, I know very little about Hegel. So Yaron knows way more. So what he said yesterday, I think it's way
I never
more...
mentioned Hegel yesterday. That's Adam. Adam probably knows more than the two of us about Hegel. So he's making
if you think about it, there is a big opportunity for the right in terms of many people don't want to go with the left because they consider, okay, these are crazy people. They don't talk my language. We don't have the cultural reference. So the right is going that way. Tucker Carlson is a very good example.
Yep.
The right, so this is unfortunately the future of the right to win. It's not the boring Mitt Romney type of right. There was an article in The Atlantic the other day, what happened to American conservatives. The author claimed that with Mitt Romney, conservatives died. Unfortunately, the only type of conservatives that can have an appeal is the conservative that looks a lot like the left in philosophy, but speaks a different language. So packages the same message, but in a language which is more user-friendly to the masses of people who are alienated from the left and culturally miles away from the left and the woke. So we are giving the right the tools to win, unfortunately, but apparently they figured it out themselves already.
Yep. Colt writes, Colt, that's a cool name, Colt. A Colt Savage. Talk about masculinity. Imagine having a name Colt Savage. Very cool, Colt. I used to be a tribalist on the right back in 2016, but with your help, I purged myself of tribalistic thinking. How else do I try to help purge others of tribalism? I've had trouble helping other people get rid of tribalism. I mean, I'll just say, I think the most important thing you can do is offer them an alternative. That is, if they're going to abandon tribalism, for what? What you have to offer them is the happiness, the success, the self-esteem that comes from individualism, for thinking for themselves. And you have to appeal to reason, encourage them to use reason. It can't be just negative. It has to be primarily positive. And I would definitely use Ayn Rand as a tool to pull them over. Anything to add there? Or try to think what I said that appealed to you, Colt. What did I say that moved you away from tribalism in 2016?
So one of the big appeals of tribalism is the heroism. So they say, look, you liberals are boring, and in a way they're right. Liberals are boring, but one of the big competitive advantages of Ayn Rand is it can offer you the heroism minus the tribalism, minus this mindless kind of martyrdom focus. So this is the one thing. The other thing is it's beautiful to see reason in action. So the other day, there was this interview between Joe Rogan and that doctor. And there was a doctor who made an episode who debunked, using a very good, clear thinking, the arguments of that doctor. I don't remember the doctor's name, but Sam Harris tweeted about it. Okay. So when you see clear thinking in action, it is appealing. It's almost magnetic. It attracts you. And it's like, I want to be like this guy. I want to think in that way. Or very often you see someone like Onkar Gat explaining something. There's this aura. There's always this magnetic power in this clear thinking, and it's attractive.
Thanks, William, for the contribution. Jonathan made a contribution in support of Nikos. Thank you, Jonathan Honing. And let's see, we're about $100 short. I'm sure we can make $100 in the next few minutes. We don't have endless time. I'm sure Nikos has something to do. It's evening over there. He's got to go, I don't know, find a date for tonight or something. He's got the dating game down. There's a chapter in the book. Now you guys should buy the book, if only for the chapter about dating. This is important, right? I mean, this is
the intellectual history of the pickup community, so you don't want to miss that.
God, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a pickup community, and I certainly didn't know they had an intellectual history. That is revelation. That's a revelation for me. Yes, everybody, we've still got 7 books. So we've cut the number in half. That's pretty good. We've still got 7 books to go. Nikos's book, Identity, Politics, and Tribalism. I keep doing this not to bore you guys who've been on the show the whole time, but because people are coming and going. I can see from the numbers watching now, people are leaving and arriving. So for people who just joined or whatever, this is the book. You should buy it. Yeah, you can get it on Kindle, but it's kind of cool to have it paperback. I have a paperback copy, and then you can always catch Nikos at Ocon or something and get him to sign the copy. All right, let's see. All right, no $20 questions left. Okay, so we're going down to the lower numbers. Okay, $100 left, guys. Somebody could just pitch in and do $100 like often you guys do. and get us over the hump. Otherwise, $5 $20 questions will get us there. $2 $50 questions will get us there. All right, Bonnie says, I'm really enjoying your book. Nikos, thank you for being a champion of intellectual independence and objectivity.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Liam, who asked the $50 question earlier, now asks, is Trump a self-made man, or is he just a trust fund baby feeding off his father's legacy?
I mean, let's agree on something. Even if Trump didn't have his father's legacy, he's talented in something. He's talented in communication. He's talented in creating a following. He's a showman. He's a performer. So, but I wouldn't know that. To answer this question, I'd have to know the biography of Trump, which I don't. So, but I don't think that if it weren't for his father's money, Trump would be a nobody. I'm not buying that. He would still have succeeded in showbiz or in any way through the, his persona and the communication skills. So you don't have to like someone to recognize that they have a charisma in something.
Yeah, he's got charisma, and he's got a real sense of marketing. He's got a real sense of marketing, and that's his real strength. But he is a baby, whether a trust fund baby or not. He's a baby. And if you look at just the wealth numbers, we don't know how much he's worth, but by estimates, if he just taken his father, what is left him, and invested in the diversified portfolio of New York real estate, he'd be as rich, if not richer, than he is today. So it's not clear that he's created any wealth. But look, he was a star on, was that You're Fired, the reality show?
I
forget what it was called.
Something like that.
Yeah, and he's got a personality, and he's got a bigger than life personality, but it's of a big baby, mostly. Cobb asks, what are your thoughts on red pill, manosphere, and men's rights movements? And is the new right influenced by these, in your opinion? Lastly, are they right that men are too feminized today?
Is this a question to you or to me?
I think to you, because I know nothing about any of these topics.
Okay, so what's my thought on the red pill?
Red pill, manosphere, and men's rights.
Okay, so first of all, they're kind of on the same trajectory, but not necessarily. So I'll start with men's rights. They're dealing with some very, very real issues. So, for example, issues that men face in court. The problem is when you adopt something that kind of looks like a victim narrative, it's not doing any good to anyone. So it brings into the forefront very real problems, which, by the way, the same happens with feminism, but it shouldn't lead to this victimized idea. The red pill, many of the things in the red pill are factually true. The point is, how do you get there? So do you get there by
tell us what a red pill is. What does it mean?
Okay, so the red pill is supposedly that you see the light, you see the truth through the lies that the system is telling you. Now, and it could be the red pill in politics and the red pill in dating. So these are kind of different categories of red pill. The phrase comes from Curtis Yarvin, who is a figure in the reactionary right. And in dating, it means you understand what are the...
Well, it comes from the movie, right? It comes from the Matrix.
Yeah, it comes from the Matrix, the red pill example with the red and the blue pill. But the person who gave it this kind of political message was Curtis Yarvin. Yep. In dating, it means that you see through the lies that, let's say, Hollywood rom-coms is telling you, and you understand what is successful in dating and what is not.
So what are the lies? I'm curious about this dating stuff. What are the lies that you see through?
Okay, we're going to get into trouble. Okay, what are the lies? So for example, what is the typical thing in the Hollywood rom-com? So the guy's kind of aloof and not super committing, and then the girl is disappointed, and then he falls on his knees and says, look, no, now I'll forever be with you. And she's super excited, and they're together. So the idea is that a lot of the things that you are taught about romance is not going to work in your benefit, except if you are by nature super charismatic. So I think that's why many people find some truth in it, because it explained to them why they had not been successful with women. So again, if you take it with a pinch of salt and you see some truths there, it can be useful. If you adopt it as a mindset and you see, again, women as one class, you as another class, deterministic, that the women are hypergamous, and hypergamy is a power that cannot be reckoned with, you're hurting yourself because you're adopting a mindset which is not good. What is the manosphere? The manosphere is, let's say, this loose network of people who give advice about dating. And So if you see how they are today, they're split. A lot of stuff there, pro-Trump, tribalism, anti-vaccine stuff. So you can get some good information, for example, about nutrition, about fitness, maybe about dating, but not a community that is super exciting or super. So yeah, take with many pinches of salt, I'd say.
There's a real problem, I think, with free will in these movements, and a real problem both for men and women in terms of denying free will, rejecting free will. Everything is conditional on how we evolved, and evolutionary psychology is big here. So they're asking, to what extent is the new right influenced by these ideas? Because, of course, Moldbug is a new right figure, an important one.
Yeah. And interestingly, by the way, lately, all these people hate Moldbug because he's pro-vaccines and pro a very active role of the state on the vaccine. So,
is he? He's pro-vaccines.
Yeah, and actually he's pro an authoritarianism that would put the Chinese, so he considers the Chinese state the most successful government in the world. So it's one of his latest. Anyway, wow. It's interesting.
Wow. Okay, it is interesting.
If you want to understand the new right, you need to check out this guy. Okay, so why is the new right close to this? Because what unites them is this idea that there's something wrong with this world, and the solution in a way is this one simple thing. And actually, I think Greg Salmieri had said you could see a similarity between woke and red pill. It's kind of this simple thing that if you understand this thing, now you get everything. Yep. So again, even woke people have things that are factually can be correct, but the method of getting there is not going to help you if you adopt it as a way through which you see the world. And again, just to be clear, not everyone in the manosphere is related to the new right, or many people have distanced themselves, like Jack Donovan, who is like a male tribalist and writes a lot about masculinity, and many other figures have distanced themselves from the new right. So just want to be fair with these figures.
Now, do you think they are right in that men are too feminized today? And if so, is it because of the estrogen in the water?
It's probably not because of estrogen or because of soy. Look, are men more feminized? I would say, isn't everyone less ambitious? Isn't everyone more coddled? There's more coddling. So it's more.
I know some pretty ambitious women.
Sorry?
I know some pretty ambitious women.
Yeah, but I don't think this is the cultural message we get. The cultural message we get is not one of agency, of overcoming, of strength, of resilience, of achievement. It's one of, well, let's try to cope and be, so.
Safety, risk aversion. There's a virus, let's wear a mask when we're outdoors and nobody's around us.
So if you take these things as achievement, courage, resilience, as what define masculinity, then no question we live in times where the virtues that define masculinity are not very fashionable. But again, this has also effects on women. So the fempowerment movement, I don't think it's a movement of ambitious and individual achievement. So men and women would be better off escaping from this culture and from any form of determinism or kind of group infighting or of this coddling. Yeah, you're all good as you are. Yay for us.
All right, guys, we're going to try to end this in 10 minutes. We're still short $100. So let's see if we can make up the $100 in the next 10 minutes. That'd be really cool. So we don't end our streak. I think we're 7 shows in a row of meeting our goals. So let's keep the streak going. All right, Capitalist Nick asks, what is the guiding principle of defining a proper political spectrum? Many objectivists would use the degree of freedom in defining right and left. Any thoughts on what possible principle to use?
First of all, the question is, why do you want to define it? If you want to define it to understand historically how politics have been, I think the right and left idea is helpful. So, for example, I had a disagreement on social media recently. Someone said the Nazis were far left. And my point is, yes, philosophically, you could say there's something there. But if you try to understand Nazism as far left, good luck understanding the rise of fascism. Good luck understanding Spain. So there's no point. Now.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note that Nazism and the right often rises in response to the far left. And if they're far left as well, then what are they responding to? So it takes away your ability to actually hold concepts and understand their interaction.
Exactly. So the best way to understand the left and right today is not as groups, not as ideologies, but as groups. That's why you can see the right turning its position on free trade, or the left turning its position, for example, in the European Union. And yet the groups are still there because they're mostly groups of supporters against each other. So in order to understand what's happening around you, left and right is useful. But in order to understand their ideas, the axis is not useful. And what the ideal axis should be, yeah, maybe it's individual and collectivism. But if we are the only ones that keep this in mind, then again, as a tool of understanding politics, it's not going to be useful.
No, I don't think, I think we just have to understand that right does not represent individual rights and freedom and individualism. It just doesn't anymore. So in a sense, there are two forms of collectivism, collectivism of the left, collectivism of the right. And yes, we're the only individualists out there. So putting us on a spectrum doesn't matter at this point. But there are people of left and right who are more individualistic, and they would be on a separate, but that's just for your thinking. In the culture out there, you know, nobody thinks in terms of freedom or lack of freedom. All right, most people are stuck. What's so great about being popular? No, most people suck, Michael says. So what's so great about being popular?
Well, you make money to begin with, so.
Yeah, if I was more popular, I would easily have gotten to $600 today. I mean, somebody like Lex Friedman or Dave Rubin wouldn't bother with 600. It would be 6,000, like that, right? A show. They make that kind of money, right? So popular.
Also, people have free will. The more people you access, the more things you can learn and they can learn if you have some interesting discussion.
Absolutely. Assuming they're good people. Okay, Nikos, thoughts on the movie 300?
Again, go to the Ayn Rand Center's channel. I did a whole show on that. So very good movie in terms of there's a clear distinction between good and bad. There's even the distinction that Leonidas is with the force of reason versus the mysticism of Xerxes versus the mysticism of the council of the wise people who are corrupted. So I love the movie. I think it's nice as movie. I think it's a movie that had a huge cultural impact in Greece in terms of what is expected, let's say, from male beauty and male virtue. And it's a nice moral, heroic story of good and bad. So I like it a lot. The second movie, not at all. The fall of the rise of the empire, how it's called. Not at all. The 300 movie, I like it a lot. And if you want a philosophical analysis, go to watch the Daily Objective episode. I think it was episode 3, not episode 300, but anyway, you'll find it in Ayn Rand Center UK's channel.
So Nico said I'll have to do a debate on the 300. Wasn't it Frank Miller? I liked it, but I didn't think it was great. Wasn't it written by Frank Miller?
Yes.
Yeah, and Frank Miller's an Ayn Rand fan. He's known as a big Ayn Rand fan. When is the audiobook version of Identity Politics and Tribalism coming out?
When it sells enough copies so that so that my publisher considers it worthy for me to do a Greek Balkan accent audiobook of the book.
All right.
Buy many copies and it might happen.
Yeah, I mean, somebody go up there and buy the last 6 copies on Amazon. Come on, guys. This is this is your own book show. We're supposed to meet goals here. Like 6 books have to go, and somebody has to pitch in $100. All right, Capitalist Nick says, what is your take on New Democracy leader Mitsotakis?
Mitsotakis, yeah.
Seems like a spineless pragmatist, but has initiated some free market reforms. What reforms do you specifically like that he has implemented?
So let me tell you what I don't like. He's the typical centrist, liberal, technocrat leader. So anything that would come after Syriza would be a breath of fresh air. So he has done good work in terms of putting down some taxes, making bureaucracy simpler in some areas. But at the same time, again, he's a statist. He's an enlightened, he sees himself as this enlightened technocrat. And the idea is Greece is this Balkan state. We need to make it a European country. That's why what's the first thing he does? He imposes the smoking ban, which I really, really, really hate. And the idea is we cannot be Balkans anymore. We have to be European, which means stronger state, stronger administration. So he has some good things, but yeah, think about him as mostly a center-left kind of centrist, although New Democracy is a conservative party.
What are your top 3 restaurants to visit in Athens that are unique? What about top 3 islands to visit other than Crete? Any other must-do or must-see activities in Greece?
Okay, my favorite restaurant in Athens is my mother's cooking. So anywhere where they have good gyros is a good restaurant. So to start from that, I'm not good. Probably Yaron knows more about good restaurants in Athens than I do. Top 3 islands. So I love Kythnos. It's a small one, but it's nice. If you want to have a crazy partying and stuff, go to Ios or Mykonos. And if you have loads of money and you want to be romantic with your girlfriend, supposedly you have to go to Santorini. I've never been. I don't know. So any small island in the Aegean, like, I like them.
All right. So we got to fix this, right? Santorini, absolutely number 1 on any list. It's spectacular. Go when the tourists are not there if you can find the time. The only disadvantage of Santorini is the tourist. It is magnificent, and go there by boat. Don't fly in or something like that. You have to arrive by boat. So you enter this crater of a volcano by boat and you see the sheer cliffs. I've been there twice. It's magnificent. It's just off the charts. Any other must-see activities in Greece? Well, I think all the touristy places are worth seeing. The
if
things
you like basketball, go watch Olympiacos this year. They're great, but
the what?
Yeah, basketball. We're a basketball powerhouse.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. We beat the United States in the semifinal of the World Championship in 2006. We were the last team who did it for 12 years.
So have you got players to play in the NBA?
What about the MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo? Of course.
Oh, that's right. He's Greek. I forget. Yeah. All right. So stop promoting pickup artists. Thessi is unhappy with me.
We're not promoting pickup artists. We're telling you that they exist, and we're criticizing what they...
Stop, period, promoting, period, pick, period, up, period, artist, period. I don't know what that means. Let's see if there's a hidden meaning there. We have missed it. RDF, thanks for the support. Enric, thank you for the support. Let's see, Bradley, is a productive purpose the cure for gender dysphoria on the left and red pill on the right? If not, what is?
Can you repeat the first part, please?
Is a productive purpose the cure for gender dysphoria on the left and red pill on the right?
Yeah, first of all, gender dysphoria is something very, very specific. I have zero idea how to approach it because it's technically, I think, a medical term, gender dysphoria. So I wouldn't know how to put it. Is a productive purpose the cure for red pill? Well, again, what do you mean by red pill? A productive purpose is good, full stop. So let's put it this way. A productive purpose is a good starting point to cure everything.
Yeah, I mean, the cure for all these things is reason and individualism. It's to take your life seriously and think it through. Productive purpose is one means for doing that, but it can be everything. Gender dysphoria, to the extent that it's not a medical issue, is a psychological issue or a sex issue. In the end, I don't think productive purpose is going to cure you of whatever problem that is. I think it's more about reason and it's more about self-esteem. Would it be about self-esteem, about being happy with yourself? Certainly self-esteem, certainly reason is a cure for red pill, right? It's to recognize what is reality, what's not reality, and to engage with reality. All right, we are short about $70, 6 books and $70. But Thessi told me not to promote anymore, so I'm stopping. If somebody wants to give $70 to get us to 600, that'd be great. I don't know how much 100 SEKs are. I don't know I'm not sure what currency SEK is. Ryan says, and this will be the last one, he says, just ordered your book, Nikos. Thanks. Great topic.
Thank you, Ryan.
And so we sold more than half the books that were on Amazon. That's pretty good. So there were only six left. We're only 6 left. Those of you listening after the fact, after the show, more of you listen afterwards anyway than we do live. So there are plenty of copies for you to buy. So you don't have to walk away empty-handed, and you can support the show. Okay, one more question from, can't pronounce the name. No way I can pronounce that name. Off topic, Yaron. If you like the movie Queen's Gambit, it's a TV series, watch Queen of Katwe, Katwe? Similar theme, Go rises from the slums with the help of chess. I've seen the movie. I've seen the Queen of Katwe. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. It's this little girl in Africa. She discovers a passion for chess. She's really good at it, and it helps kind of overcome the life in the slums and rise up. I really enjoyed that movie. It was good. I think it was made in Africa. It's kind of a semi-low budget movie, but it's actually very well made. And I love Queen's Gambit. The actress is fantastic, and it's just in the middle of it, I wasn't sure I was going to like it because it seemed going like in the wrong direction, but then it saves itself at the end and makes it all worthwhile. So I really enjoyed Queen's
Great
Gambit.
music and great acting by the guy who plays the Soviet master. He's
Yes,
great.
yes, they're all, and she's great. So the acting generally is great. It's well photographed. It's got a unique color palette. It's not a boring movie. It's definitely stylized. It definitely has thinking going on in terms of the use of colors. And trying to take a game like chess, which is pretty boring, and dramatize it and make it into kind of something you're riveted to. Very, very well made. Queen's Gambit, the series, and then the movie Queen of Katwe, Katwe, which is a slum in, I can't remember which African country. All right, Nikos, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, Yaron. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, this was fun. It was a lot of fun. Let's see, the book is available for sale. Don't forget to buy the book. Don't forget to give the show a thumbs up before you leave. So like the show, don't forget to share it, and don't forget to support the Yaron Brook Show on yaronbrookshow.com/support, Patreon, Subscribe Star, and locals. You have no excuse. Everywhere we'll take your money. So trade with you. What am I talking? We're not taking anybody's money. Uganda was the country in Africa where this happened. We're down to 5 books in stock. We're already down to 5 books. But I'm telling you, within a couple of days, there'll be no books in stock. And then you'll have a problem. Then we'll have to solve that problem. All right. You can follow Nikos. I'm not sure where, but certainly at the Ayn Rand Institute. He is now full-time faculty at the Ayn Rand University. He'll be co-teaching a class with Kargate on critical race theory, on its intellectual roots and its implications soon. So there'll be emails and tweets and stuff like that where you can register and sign up. I'm going to take that class. I think I'm really curious, and it sounds like a really, really interesting class. So I'm going to take that class. Hopefully you guys will too. All right, Nikos, I'm sure we'll have you on again sometime, maybe to talk about this class. And sure. Congratulations on the new job at the Institute. I know for you, even more important, congratulations on moving to Greece and to Athens, and to having the opportunity to live in Athens. I'm looking forward to visiting you there and figuring out what the 3 best restaurants in Athens are. That is going to be
good fun.
That is going to be Nikos and my goal for the next few years, is to visit Greece enough to be able to figure that out. All right, everybody, have a great day. Have a good rest of your weekend. I will talk to you soon, and hopefully I'll see you in Europe soon, Nikos. Bye, guys.